Welcome back. Today, we're jumping straight into a massive historical mystery in this explainer. We are talking about ancestry, the rise and fall of empires, and how modern Cambodia actually came to be. It's a total demographic reset, and honestly, the reality is so much more fascinating than the myths. Let's get right into it.
So here is the big question we're unpacking today. When you look at modern Khmers, who are their direct ancestors? Are they the descendants of those legendary god kings, the grand royal lineages of the Angkor Empire? Or are they actually the descendants of the everyday Chenla people, the laborers and commoners who literally carved those magnificent temples out of stone? It's a huge debate. And to really get to the bottom of it, we have to go way back and look at the actual DNA.
And that brings us to some truly groundbreaking science. A while back, the David Reich Lab over at Harvard published this incredible study in Nature Scientific Reports. They actually managed to extract ancient DNA from a protohistoric individual found at the Wat Kham Nu Cemetery in Cambodia. Now, extracting usable DNA from the 1st to 3rd centuries CE in that kind of climate is, well, it's incredibly rare. But because they pulled it off, we now have this perfectly objective scientific window into the region's deep, deep roots. And wow, the genetic makeup of this ancient individual tells quite a story. Looking at the data, we see about 55% local Austroasiatic roots. So these are the descendants of early farmers who came down from southern China and mixed with the ancient indigenous hunter-gatherers. Makes sense, right? But here is the kicker. The other 45 to 50% is South Asian admixture. Almost half. This absolutely proves that a deep, complex genetic blending with Indian merchants and sailors was already happening as early as the 1st century. We're talking about a highly diverse demographic foundation that was laid down centuries before anyone even thought about building Angkor Wat. So from this incredibly diverse, bustling, ancient population, we start seeing the formation of early Indianized states. If we trace the timeline, it starts with the Funan Kingdom in the 1st century, which was this massive maritime trading hub right in the Mekong Delta. Then, around the 6th century, the center of power shifts inland to the Kingdom of Chenla. And finally, we hit 802 CE. This is when King Jayavarman II manages to unify all these different warring factions, establish his government, and boom, the Angkor Empire is born. It was this monumental, top-down consolidation of power that really cemented the lineage of the great rulers. Now, to understand how this empire actually functioned, we really need to look at the incredible synergy of that era. On one hand, you had the visionary royals, the kings who governed the empire and commissioned what are literally some of the largest religious monuments on the planet. But on the other hand, you had the absolute dedication of the commoners. These everyday people, the builders and villagers, were intricately tied to a vast Hindu temple system. They were the ones out there quarrying the stone and turning those grand royal visions into reality. It was this remarkable, clearly defined partnership between the royal class who envisioned these massive projects and the vast population of builders who brought them to life. But as with all great empires, things eventually started to shift. Fast forward to the 14th and 15th centuries, and a tightly structured system is facing some serious external pressure. In 1350, the new Thai capital of Ayutthaya is established, and geopolitically, it's situated dangerously close to Angkor. From that point until about 1430, you see almost relentless, incessant warfare between Angkor and Ayutthaya. It was just a prolonged period of frontier conflict, and naturally, that put an enormous strain on the resources and the overall stability of the Khmer Empire. All of that constant pressure finally reached a boiling point in a deeply pivotal historical event. In 1430, King Parama Raja II of Ayutthaya invaded and actually laid siege to Angkor. The historical texts describe a grueling 7-month-long siege. And during this incredibly tense period, the Cambodian king Dharmasoka passed away. The texts also note something really critical here. Several high-ranking Cambodian mandarins and monks actually defected over to the besiegers. Finally, in 1431, the city was taken. Enormous amounts of booty, sacred statues, and many prisoners were captured by the Ayutthaya forces. This moment right here, this is what triggered a massive demographic and cultural reset. When Angkor fell, a huge portion of the royals, the intellectuals, and the high-ranking officials were captured and swept off to Ayutthaya. At the same time, many other surviving elites actively fled there just to escape the war. So practically overnight, the royal class and the cultural elites were integrated into the Thai sphere, completely severed from the Cambodian heartland. Meanwhile, the everyday people, the laborers, the commoners, the builders, they mostly stayed behind. With that old, top-down administrative hierarchy gone, the entire region experienced a fundamental transition. And it's exactly this split that forged modern Cambodia. Think about it. With the elites now integrated elsewhere, the demographic base of the region became the masses, and they adapted. They embraced Theravada Buddhism, which was much more decentralized. It completely shifted away from the massive logistical nightmares and endless resource drains of the old stone temple system. The ancestors of modern Cambodians forged an entirely new societal identity, and it was rooted squarely in the resilience of those everyday commoners who stayed behind and evolved.
To really capture the feeling of this huge transformation, there's this incredible quote from historian Lawrence Palmer Briggs in his book, The Ancient Khmer Empire. When describing the common people migrating away from the old capital, he writes, "Like a serpent shedding its skin, these descendants of the fabled Naga princess left their weary past behind them and moved on to a far region where they were no longer haunted by a nightmare of temples." It's such a poetic way to describe the sheer logistical exhaustion of that era. The monumental building projects had simply run their course, and the people gracefully, naturally transitioned into a completely new way of life.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to chew on. We've seen how both ancient DNA and historical records show that the roots of a culture belong just as much to the everyday builders as they do to the kings they served. So, how does the memory of these ancient demographic shifts, the displacement of elites, and the fall of grand empires shape modern Southeast Asian relations today? When you realize that modern identities are built on these profound historical resets, it really changes how you view the present, doesn't it? Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this deep dive. Keep questioning the history you think you know, and I'll see you in the next explainer.